Welcome to the Mobile Hunters Dojo, a community helping hunters reach their full potential in the woods and in life. I'm your host, Matt Lear. Come on in, kick off your shoes, and take a seat on the mat as we develop a mindset for success, forge self-discipline, practice the art of continuous improvement, and hone our craft. Welcome back to the dojo, everybody. This is Matt Lear, your host, and this week's going to be a fun one. We partnered up with the Running and Gunning podcast with Justin Sinan, and we did a collabo together. And Justin's going to drop part 1 tomorrow. I'm going to drop part 2 tomorrow on Friday. So make sure you head over there and listen to the Run and Gun podcast with Justin Sinan. We do a pretty cool BS session. We go into what characteristics we have found out of all the people that we interview, like what makes them a great hunter. And we dive into some other stuff too. It was a really awesome conversation with Justin. So tomorrow he will drop episode 1. I will drop episode 2 of that one, and make sure you don't miss it. It's going to be a good one. This episode is a Do This Now. It's that time of month again where we drop a Do This Now. And just a little recap on that, just in case it's your first time listening to a Do This Now episode. Do This Now is for individuals who have yet to get that big buck on the wall or to find consistency. And not to go back through everything we did, but we set some SMART goals. We did some scouting, some boots on the ground scouting. And what we were looking for specifically were rut locations to hunt. The strategy for the Do This Now series is to stay away from these rut locations. If you want to hunt elsewhere, go ahead and do that. But we're going to go nowhere near these, like preferably not even on the same piece of property, because our odds are the greatest at this level where we're at. If we haven't found that success yet, I think the odds for us to find success are greatest during the rut. Now that changes as you get experience. I think there's a really good case to be made for targeting a buck early season. In some states like Michigan, that's a little tough, because you don't get in there till October, and by then small game hunters and whatnot have gotten in there and kind of, started to put pressure on the bucks. But, unless you can control your area, you'd have to have a pretty big piece of property to do that. So the rut is our best chance to get that first big buck on the wall or start to find some more consistency. So when we went scouting, we were specifically looking for doe bedding complexes that had a scrape on the outside, really close to that bedding, like a big scrape. And then bonus if it had a rub line that went through there. That's what we were looking for. So now, after we got all our scouting done, we are now at a phase where we're going to deploy some cameras. So here's how you know if what I'm going to say is meant for you. If you have 5 or more cameras and you've deployed them before and, you've been able to gain intel, this episode is probably not for you. If trail cameras are new, or you have 1 to 3 of those and you haven't quite been able to utilize those, then this episode is going to be for you. And so we talked about, you should have already tested your cameras. You should already have gotten lithium batteries and you formatted your cards. You've tested those at home. If you did not a big deal. You can do that now. So make sure you get lithium batteries, because we want to let them sit all through the season. Make sure that you've tested them, you've walked by them, you've learned their range, all that good stuff. You've checked the card to make sure they're picking up your pictures. And now we're ready to go out and deploy them. And so if you have 1 camera, or your first camera, we'll say, we are going to put this on the scrape that we found outside of bedding. But what I don't want you to do is just go stick that camera at waist high right next to the scrape. We're going to back off that scrape a little bit. The range, maybe 15 feet or so back from that scrape. We're going to put that camera and all your cameras up high, 6 feet, and then tilted down. Good Sit Mobile, for a real inexpensive price, make these awesome camera mounts that you can tie up. They're public land legal, and they help you angle your camera. And if you go with the deluxe version, it has like a little laser that will show you exactly where your camera is pointing. Good Sit Mobile, we're not affiliated. I've had Brian on here a few times. I would call Brian a friend. I'm not suggesting them because he is a friend. I'm suggesting it because it's a good product, especially for someone who hasn't been out there angling your cameras and gotten used to it. The other way to do it is free. You can go out and get a branch and stick that behind the camera and allow that to angle your camera down. Another way to find out if your camera is pointed in the right location is take your phone, put it on your front camera, on your front screen, and then hold the camera lens next to or up to the camera lens on your phone, up to the camera lens that you have on the tree. And then you can be able to take a picture and you can look at it and say, generally, this is where my camera is pointed. Okay. So we want it 6 feet up, angled down on the scrape. Now, there are plus and minuses for this. Okay. The plus side is it gets the camera out of the, straight on visual eyesight of the deer. I still from time to time have, deer look up at my cameras, but it's far and few in between. It gets it out of sight of humans most of the time. I can't tell you how many times people walk by my cameras and never even know they're there. So those are pluses. You really don't want deer staring at your camera. What I found out, not all the time, there's never like this always happens type of rule, but if I find a good buck and he looks at my camera, I never get him on camera again. That's how it's kind of worked out for me. Maybe not never, but 90% of the time, he's not going to come back. If he's staring right at my camera and that's the picture I get, typically he's onto something and thinks it's fishy and he kind of moves on, especially today when we have so many cameras out in the woods, right? Does, it's funny, I haven't really noticed. I don't keep a hard log on does, meaning like identifying each doe, but it seems like it doesn't really seem to bother the does all that much. Younger deer, younger bucks, it doesn't seem to bother a whole lot. But if you get a good buck and he's staring right at it, man, I would bet you that you might not see him again. Some deer all have different personalities and some just don't mind the camera. But from my experience, most of the time, those bigger ones don't want anything to do with them. So up high, like I said, 6, 7, 8 feet, angle down, make sure that you know that your camera's working and it's at the right angle and it's hitting that scrape. 15 feet back from the scrape, pointing it north is really good. East, you got the sun rising. West, you got it setting. You want as little false triggers as possible, but that's how you're going to set up your camera. The negative part of that is that your zone now is much smaller. Like what you're going to catch in that camera, where if you would have it at waist height, you're going to get much broader field of view with that camera, which means you'll probably pick up more pictures. It will be easy for deer to scoot your camera if they don't hit that scrape. I think it's worth that. You have to make the decision on how you want that. But I typically hang mine 15 feet back or so, 6, 7 feet up, angle down, and I'm getting less pictures, but I'm getting them when they're hitting that scrape and they're not detecting my camera. So if you have one camera, actually it doesn't matter how many cameras you have, your first camera and maybe your only camera is going to go on there. Now, if that can be a cell cam, fantastic, do that, because we're not going to use the camera to kill a deer, but it's going to tell you a lot about deer movement on scrapes throughout the year, and you'll get it in real time. You can take notes on it. You can pull up your weather map while those pictures are coming in, and when you have a nice buck hit it, you can kind of see where the weather is, what the wind is doing or what it should be doing. And it'll also tell you when things start to heat up in the woods come November. Right? You should probably start to see those scrapes that last week of October getting hit quite a bit. It'd be really cool if you can watch that in real time. If you can't, don't sweat it. You don't need a cell cam. Like I said, we're not using the cameras to kill the deer. We're learning about the deer with these cameras. So if you have an SD camera, that's fine. If you have a cell cam, use it here and then take notes throughout the year as you get, good pictures of nice bucks on there. If you have a second camera, then I want you to take your second camera and I want you to find a run coming out of your property that you plan to hunt. If this is public or if this is private, if you can, you might not be able to do that. You might have to find a camera that is moving to food off of your property. But what I like is a camera, an SD camera that is right off of the roadway where I can just pull over with my car, jump out, not even enter the woods, but grab the camera, which is on the first tree going into the woods that is on a major run coming off. They're leaving the property. Most of the time, they're going to food. That means there's probably ag across the street and they're going over there. Or vice versa. I have food on my property and the deer are crossing the street to come over to the food. I want the camera right there because I can go and enter without getting into the woods and messing things up. I can check that camera once a month and I'm not going to mess anything up. It's fun. It keeps me entertained throughout the summer. It also just, opens my eyes to what deer are coming in and out. You're going to be shocked when they're leaving the property. What I found a lot of times is that these deer are leaving actually in daylight. This is really interesting. You'll have plenty of nighttime pictures there too, but it's a good learning tool and it's one that won't wreck your area. If you don't have a road close, you're landlocked, but you have a field edge and you have a heavy run coming out to that field edge, you can hang it there too. That's fine. But you don't want this. The second camera is not a place that's deep in the woods where you got to walk and go check it. Okay. This is a camera that you can go check without intruding into the woods and causing any problems. Third and final camera. Like I said, if you have more than this, then you probably already have a camera regiment and this isn't really all that helpful to you. But that third camera, I would like us to take this camera and go to another piece of property. But you're like, Matt, I did all my scouting on this piece. Even if this is a private piece that you have, even if it's large, I want us to take this camera and go to a piece of public bias, if you have it, and go in and scout that public in one day, find a scrape, and put that camera up there. And scrapes are really hard to find right now. Maybe it's not just a scrape, but it's a creek crossing. That's another great place to put this camera. What I call like a crisscross where you have, one trail running north and south, another trail running east and west, and they meet. You can put the camera there as well. And then I want you to leave it, and I don't want you to come back and check it. We're going to leave that there all year. And then we're going to come back and we're going to check that camera, say at the end of season, January, February. And it's like Christmas. You're going to open it up and you're going to see what's over there. And what I hope happens if you pick one of those spots, a scrape, a crossing or creek crossing, or even a food source. If you go to a piece of public and there's oaks there and I don't know if you can tell, you should be able to tell by now if you get some binocs to see if they've got any buds producing, or you can put it on an ag field that's on public. Any of those will work. And you're going to come back and it's going to be like Christmas morning. You're going to pop that SD card in and we're going to see what you have. I'm going to do a little backtracking. Now that I say that out loud, I actually want you to go back in like a month and make sure that camera's working properly. Okay. Swap out the cards, make sure you do everything right. And I just want to make sure nothing's grown up in the way. That's one thing I want to do is also make sure that when you put the camera up, it's clear of any like limbs or weeds that are going to grow up and trigger that camera like crazy. And then after you check it that one time in a month and everything is kosher, it looks good, and you got some deer on camera, I want you to leave it there and we're going to forget it until January. And then we're going to go back and look at it. And we'll talk about that in January as we process some of our camera data during that time. And that's it. So we're going to have a camera on the scrape that we found outside of bedding when we were scouting. If you didn't do that yet, don't worry. Go back to last week's episode with Brian Dombrowski and we talk about summer scouting. You can still get it done. You can still find it. It's a little bit more work and you have to deal with spiders and bugs. I actually find that kind of fun. I know that's crazy to say that, but I do. You can still find that stuff now. Don't give up. So scrape outside of bedding, second camera, either right off the road on a heavy run or right off a field edge on a heavy run. And you're just going to let it soak and you can go check it. And that's one you can check and have fun with and keep you entertained and just kind of keep gives you an idea of what bucks are moving in and out of that property, what deer are moving in and out. And the last one is on a foreign piece of land that you put it on either a scrape that you find while you scout, a creek crossing, one of those X's in the woods where a trail's running north and south and another one's running east and west, or on a food source. And you're going to recheck that camera at the end of August, make sure everything's good. If it's good, you're going to leave it, and then we'll come back in January. That's it. That's what we're going to do with our cameras this month. And then we'll be back next month to talk about what we do in July. So I hope this made sense to you. If you have any questions, just hit me up on a DM. We'll talk about it. And don't forget that we partnered with the Running and Gunning podcast with Justin Simon tomorrow. He's going to drop part 1. I will drop part 2, so you get a bonus dojo episode tomorrow. So tune in for that. It was an awesome episode. And until next week, when we talk again, embrace the journey. Well, that is a wrap for us here at the dojo. We'll be back next Thursday with another Whitetail Master. You can also listen to us every Tuesday for our 10-minute Tuesday episode where I break down a tactic, talk about mindset and personal development, or anything else that might jump in my head in 10 minutes or less. If you like what we are doing here at the dojo, please give us a review. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Mobile Hunters Dojo.